The silence of the desert seas are warm. Welcome to the spring. Palm Springs is just for fun, just for golf and just for sun, just for taking all the tension out of things.
A dry, sun-baked plain lying at the foot of towering mountains. Geologists tell us that millions of years ago it was the bottom of an ancient sea. Yet today, it's a waterless wasteland, across which a modern highway threads its way from the lush coastal valleys of California to an equally lush oasis in this barrenness. Palm Springs, California, a modern little winter resort city that came to be known as the playground of the stars.
What's going on, everybody? How are you doing today? So here I am in Palm Springs, California. I'm outside of a very famous house, and I'm going to tell you what happened in this house. One of the a giant murder mystery occurred right in this house, and very famous in Palm Springs, and happened in the 70s. But it was also owned by some famous actors. And here with me is Steve, Memory Lane Trips with Steve.
Hi, everybody.
And he's going to tell us a little bit about who owned the place, because I find it fascinating who bought, after the murders took place, who bought this house and his connection to Hollywood. I mean, he was an actor as well, but he was connected to somebody huge in Hollywood. Let me flip the camera around. So, Steve, this home here, what's the name of the street we're on?
It's Camino Del Sur. There's a sign right here
Right.
on the corner of, does that say Abrigo?
Abrigo. Abrigo.
Right.
And this house here is where a very, very gruesome triple murder took place in the 70s. But it was owned after that by George Nader. Who is George Nader?
So George Nader was a writer and an actor. I think he started as an actor and actually became a very well-known and very successful author later in his career. But he was best friends with Rock Hudson.
Right.
And they were friends their entire adult life. I've heard stories that they were, in the beginning, that they were partners or lovers, and I'm not sure if that's true because I've heard, conflicting things about that, but they were definitely like best friends for their entire adult lives. And later, George Nader did have a boyfriend, a live-in boyfriend or
Partner.
companion, partner, whatever, and I believe they lived here.
Yeah.
For almost until his death.
Yeah, I believe till 2002.
Although it's interesting because I saw, well, maybe after he died, maybe his partner moved to Cathedral City.
Okay.
I think that was Mark Miller.
Mark Miller, yep.
Was it Mark?
That's his partner.
And I actually visited their cenotaph at Forest Lawn in Cathedral City. It says Rock Hudson, George Nader, and Mark Miller.
Right.
I just don't know if Mark is the right first name, but I know.
I feel like it is.
Yeah.
Definitely Miller was the last name.
Yeah.
But it's interesting
anyway,
that they all have a cenotaph because all their ashes were scattered separately.
Exactly. And the interesting thing also is that Mark Miller became Rock Hudson's secretary.
Right.
So he was his secretary for at least 10 years, maybe more. And that's the connection. That's how they all knew each other.
Yeah.
But they were the last owners. I mean, not the last owners. Obviously, there were owners after that. But as far as famous owners, I don't know if anyone famous has
bought it
lived
since
here since then. But there were two other famous people who lived here. In fact, it was first built in 1961 by. Now I'm going to have to look at my phone and see who it was that. Scott's out there with no hat in the sun. But then again, he's from Canada, so he's just soaking it all in. To take some back with him.
Yep.
So we were trying to remember who it was. So the first owner of the house in 1961 was. So the first owner of this home, which was built in 1961, was George Arnold, and he was famous because he was the owner and maybe the creator of Rhythm on Ice. I don't know if you remember back in the 1960s, probably 50s too, the Ice Capades and all the famous, ice skaters and stuff. I think that all started back probably in the late 50s, early
Yeah.
60s. And so he was famous for that, and he owned this house. And then he sold it, I believe it was in 1977, to Greg Sherwood. That's actually a woman's name. Greg was
An actress, yeah.
I'm not really sure what she's in. I guess I probably should have looked her up.
Probably not too much.
Yeah,
you
she's
know.
not real famous, but sort of famous. But she married Horace Dodge Jr., who was, I think, the son of one of the owners of Dodge, of the
Right.
Dodge automobile
Yep.
dynasty. And
Dodge.
so in their divorce, she apparently received $11 million and proceeded to, in really a short order, to
Blow it all.
Blow it all.
Who did she blow it with?
Yeah, with her bodyguard
Boyfriend. Isn't that always the case?
Yeah.
The bodyguard weasels his way
But
in.
hey, at least she had fun. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounded like she must have had a lot of fun.
I wonder if I would like to do some more research on her, find out where she is now, if she's still
Yeah,
around,
yeah,
or
maybe we'll find
it's
out.
only
We
the
can find out
70s.
later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, think of how much fun you can have with $11 million.
Yeah.
But apparently, she went through it really fast. So that was just that was the second famous person who lived here. Then the fourth famous person was after, the murders took place then in
78, I believe.
78. So a year after she sold this house, the people who moved in here,
Right.
they were involved in this crime that Scott's going to tell you about, because I didn't even realize there'd been a crime here. And then after that had happened, I'm assuming that George Nader?
George Nader bought it, after
I'm
that.
assuming that he knew that there had been...
No, he did not.
Oh, that's part of the story?
Yeah, the realtor did not tell him that a murder had taken
that's
place.
the interesting thing. In California, now the laws may have changed over time, but I know that, at least I think currently, if someone's died in the house within the last 3 years, I think at some point it might have been 5 years or maybe just a couple of years, but I think right now it's 3 years.
They have to
Let
disclose.
the buyer know. They have to disclose that to the buyer. It's, legally you have to do that. Back in the 60s, anything kind of went in real estate, so they probably didn't even have to even mention that.
Yeah.
So it probably wasn't even a thing back then, I bet. Because I remember hearing from real estate friends that back when you would buy a house anywhere here in California, it was like a one-sheet thing where you just kind of sign your name agreeing to buy the house. Now there's like 100 pieces of paper to sign and notarize, and you have to sign your life away. I mean, everything has to be disclosed.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of I'm going off on a little tangent. It'd be much more interesting to listen to Scott talk about what actually happened in this house here.
Yeah, if I can remember now. I've got a lot of information in my head now.
Well, yeah,
It's crazy. But here's the house right here. So it has been extensively remodeled. I'll give you a look at what it used to look like. Right there. That's what it used to look like. But you can still see that top part there. Still looks the same. It's hard to tell if anybody even lives here right now. It looks very desolate. Nothing in the windows. Blinds are all down. But it's hard to believe that a famous murder, really gruesome murder, took place here. Right here.
I'm guessing probably. I mean, that's just my guess. I mean,
5 million?
It could be 25 million. I think we'll look and see.
I think if you find out what happened in this house, I think you might be a little more, you might want to negotiate the price down a bit, but it does stretch far back, and I'm sure there's a nice pool. I can get a good aerial view, put it in here. Oh, it actually looks like, I don't know, it's hard to tell if anybody's here. Here we go. Here's the house. So, a couple named Ed and Sophia Friendly bought this house I'm assuming from Greg Sherwood, the actress, or Dodge, bought this house. Now, keep in mind the name Frances Williams. That was their maid, their housekeeper. That's what I find fascinating about this story. That's where I'm going to end the story at later on in the video. So, Sophia, before she was married to Ed, who was a wealthy man himself, she was married to Curtis Hutton, who was a cousin of Barbara Hutton, famous socialite, wealthy heiress. And so Barbara Hutton had a trust set up for family members, and he was going to get $1 million. Back in the day, still $1 million, still a lot today.
Yeah.
It was a lot more back then. So Sophia had it in her, she rearranged the trust that said if anything happens to Curtis, her husband at the time, if anything happened to him, the trust goes to her, right away. Her, then her kids. No one else in the family of the Hutton family. She wanted it all to go to herself. Now, she had 2 kids with Curtis, and I believe she may have had another child with Ed. I'm not sure, but she had Edward is the name you want to remember. Ed Friendly, then she had another son. Now, what happened was, in 1978, somebody came to this house. Sophia answered the door, spoke to him for a little bit, then he shot her dead right in the front door, right in the front hallway there. He proceeded to go into the kitchen. He shot the maid, Frances Williams, who got on her knees, I'm guessing to pray, and then he assassinated her. Then he went into the back room and he killed Ed. Ed was hard of hearing. He probably didn't even know that somebody was in the house shooting. He was almost deaf.
That sounds like a hit.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But who was the hit put out on? And who did it?
Yeah.
It's never been solved. But pretty much what is assumed is because Curtis was close to death. He was very close to death. The son, Edward, had a friend, a ne'er-do-well that he met in Europe. And and when the assassin left the house, he put a fedora over the face of Sophia. So that's a sign. That's a hit sign, and that's showing I was reading extensively about it. That shows that victim is the one that was intended.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So Ed had this friend, and pretty much, what do you call it? Not just the FBI, but the Interpol gathered that this friend was hired by the son because he knew his father was about to die, but he wanted his mother dead too because he wanted to get all the money and split it between him and his sister. So it was never proven. It was alleged, but it's still unsolved to this day that is what it was, an assassin hired by her son to do it, and killed all 3 of them in here. And what's fascinating to me is, not fascinating, what's really tragic is the maid, Frances Williams, was just there. She was baking. Yeah. When they came the next morning, the warming oven was still on. Wow. They were having a fish dinner that she was preparing for them in the kitchen. And it was a gruesome scene. And Frances Williams, it kind of, like, it's a triple assassination, and everybody knew about the Friendlies. They were a very powerful couple. Everybody knew about the connection to the Hutton family. But this woman was just here, doing her job, and she's...
Now, what was their connection, the Friendlies' connection to the Hutton, to Barbara Hutton?
Sophia, the wife, who was murdered first here in the front foyer, right here. She was married to Curtis, which was Barbara Hutton's first cousin. And Barbara Hutton has set up trust funds for all of her different family members.
Oh, okay. So she was actually related to Barbara Hutton.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Barbara Hutton, near to the end, didn't have a lot of money, from what I know, but that their trust fund still existed. So the son knew that $1 million, if he got rid of his mom and his father happened to pass away because he was on his deathbed, and it worked out perfectly for him. Yeah. Because the father did Curtis passed away, I think, a week later. Wow. And him and his sister inherited the money. So it was all for money.
That's sad. It usually is, right?
Like you look at all these houses around.
Or love or sex or money.
Always. All these houses around here, why you got to think, as a police officer, as an investigator, I mean, I just driving in here, I passed hundreds of houses just going up and down the street. But one house, where a triple murder takes place, where it looks like an assassination, they're executed. So you got to think, why this house was chosen and nothing was stolen, nothing was ransacked. So you automatically, as an investigator, think it has to be connected to his business dealings. The husband has to be connected to the wife.
And of course, all this is alleged, because I'm guessing
all this is alleged.
Alive, right? The son must still be alive.
Right. Yes. And it's there's a famous case in Canada that happened with Honey and Barry Sherman, which is not too far from where I grew up. And I've got some video. I'm going to do a video on that later, I think, but that's still unsolved too. But it's about 4 or 5 years ago now, the Sherman murders, and they still don't know who did that. But right away they investigate the husband's business dealings, the wife, because why one random house with nothing stolen, with nothing's taken, a break-in, and all these homes, even back then, I'm assuming there's heavy security. There's probably more of a guy on foot than there are. Cameras and stuff like that.
Have security people that drive through
right.
Things, but...
So the guy came in, he did his job quickly and got right out. And so what I was saying about Frances was she was wrong place. Well, I mean, right, it was her place of business, but definitely the wrong time. And she's buried in the same cemetery where Frank Sinatra's buried. I didn't even bother to look up Ed and Sophia's grave. I would pay tribute to, you know, what I usually do. But Frances is buried in the southwest corner of that cemetery in an unmarked grave surrounded by other graves. Wow. There's one patch, and that's where she almost forgotten.
Yeah, I wonder why it's unmarked.
I don't know.
I always wonder why people have unmarked graves.
Well, I just think maybe she didn't have family. Maybe she was, I think she was 67.
Yeah.
You know, she was, you know, probably retired. That's retirement age.
Yeah.
And it's just sad to me that she was just left with, you know, she was on her knees, probably begging for her life. And there you are, put in an unmarked grave. Maybe she had no family. Wow. Or maybe back in the day also, it was because it was such a huge story here. Maybe her family didn't want any connection with it. They didn't want people.
Yeah.
There's that. But I'm thinking it's just she was probably didn't have money.
Yeah.
Maybe the Friendlies didn't pay her. Because it seemed, from what I've gathered, and again, this is just from reading extensively, they were not the nicest of people. It doesn't mean, obviously, they deserve that at all. This is what I've read, and maybe they didn't pay her a lot. Maybe she's just making no money. I don't know. But now, I think what I'm going to do is, after we leave, I'm going to go over to and see if I can find that little patch where Frances is buried and leave something there for her. But yeah, this is the house. So it was called the Triple Assassination of Palm Springs. If you just Google that, you'll be able to find stories. And our friend Lindsay from I Am Not a Stalker, you know Lindsay? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know her personally, but
yeah,
she has a wonderful site.
Wonderful website. And when I was researching it, I came across a great article, and I was reading it. I was like, this seems very Lindsay-ish. I didn't realize where I was reading it, and of course it was Lindsay because.
Well, that's how you found out about it.
No, I found out about it from somebody gave me a tip. I can't remember who it was. Somebody gave me a tip about this story. It's been in my head for about 6 months, and then I was just rereading and reading various things. But one of the articles I was reading it was from Lindsay's.
Now, was it Dirt.com? I think Dirt.com is her new website.
Yes.
And are they connected?
They're connected, and but it was one of her older articles. Okay. It's probably about 4 years old, I'd say. Okay. But I think it's interesting that she does Dirt.com, which is really all about real estate and about, you know, famous people in real estate and you know, probably things that have happened in the particular home. So. Yeah, I think she was doing research because it was George Nader as a fan. Then she likes the same sort of things we do, you know, which is the celebrity homes and mixed with true crime and all that stuff. Yeah. So I was reading. So big shout out to Lindsay because I got some extra information from her. All right, let's go over to the cemetery and see if we can find where Frances is peacefully resting. We hope. So here I am at Desert Park Memorial Cemetery, I believe it's called. And this is where Frances, the housekeeper, is buried in an unmarked grave. Now, I wasn't sure if it's southwest corner. I'm in the southwest corner. Now, I wasn't sure if she's surrounded by unmarked markers, because it's an area that's going to be done soon, or if they're marked. So really, she could be anywhere, and that disappoints me, and I would like to find her exact spot. But there are some, you can tell, big gaps in between the graves here. But southwest corner is here. I'm not sure. I don't know. I brought a rock like I usually do to leave. But Frances, she could be anywhere here. And I'm just not too sure. But nobody deserves an ending like that, and she definitely didn't. That's what interested me the most about the story, was this lady who was just cooking dinner for the people she works for, doing some house cleaning, and gets caught up in such a horrific violent act. So the southwest corner, right here, that's Forest Lawn Cathedral City, I believe it's called. We're that cemetery there across, but it's not too big. But yeah, it could be anywhere. I don't know. I really don't know. It's unmarked, and the office is closed, and I don't think they would know either, really. Oh, no, I guess they would probably. But here's a nice spot in between two graves, two women, Thelma and Elsie. So let's pick this spot. Leave a rock for Francis. All right, that's it. That's the story of the Friendlies, George Nader, and Francis. Wow, this took a long time to put together, and but it was worth it for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Rest in peace to everyone involved in the story, especially Francis. Okay, peace.